All right, history buffs and scandal connoisseurs, are you ready to have your monocles pop and your jaws hit the floor? We're about to drag some of history's most regal figures through the glorious, hilarious mud. Forget the stuffy portraits and dry textbooks. We're diving headfirst into the juicy, the bizarre, and the downright dumbest decisions ever made by people wearing crowns. If you thought your family gatherings were dramatic, wait till you hear about these crowned clowns. So, grab your popcorn, loosen your corsets, because things are about to get weirdly wonderful. 1. Kicking off with a bang, or rather, a nay? Meet Caligula, the Roman emperor who looked at his favorite horse Incitatus and thought, you know what this noble steed needs? A promotion. We're not talking about a bigger stable or fancier oats. Caligula allegedly planned to make Incitatus a consul, one of the highest political offices in Rome. Imagine Senator Sparklehooves debating tax reform, or perhaps just demanding more sugar cubes in the Senate cafeteria. Historians still bicker whether he was dead serious or just pulling the ultimate prank on the stuffy senators he despised. Either way, the fact that people believe this dude would appoint a horse to high office tells you everything about the wild ride that was Caligula's reign. It truly gives a new meaning to horse sense in politics. 2. Next up, let's waltz into the utterly bonkers world of Joanna the Mad of Castile. This queen took "till death do us part" as a loose suggestion rather than a binding contract. Deeply in love with her dashing husband, Philip the Handsome, and by all accounts he was a looker, Joanna didn't just mourn when he kicked the bucket. Oh no. She embarked on a multi-year road trip across Spain with his embalmed corpse as her travel buddy. Picture this, the royal procession, and there's Joanna, occasionally cracking open the coffin to gaze upon Philip's increasingly less handsome face. Was it profound grief? Was she genuinely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? Or was her scheming dad trying to paint her as unfit to rule so he could snatch the crown? The answer is probably all of the above, with a side of really questionable hygiene. 3. Let's slither over to ancient Rome for Empress Messylina, wife of Emperor Claudius, who basically treated the imperial palace like her personal debauchery playground. This wasn't just a case of boys will be boys, but empresses will outscandal everyone. Ancient gossips who loved a juicy story painted her as a nymphomaniac of Olympic proportions. The legendary tale? She challenged Rome's top prostitute to a 24-hour sex marathon to see who could service more men. And guess who allegedly won? That's right, the Empress. When she wasn't busy setting records in competitive fornication, she was ruthlessly bumping off anyone who annoyed her. Her reign of romps ended when she tried to marry another guy while still hitched to Claudius. Even for Rome, that was a bit much. Claudius had her permanently retired. 4. Let's shuffle over to late Victorian England for the Tranby Croft scandal, or as it should be known, when the future king got caught up in a cheating kerfuffle. Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales, Bertie to his mates and the future King Edward VII, was a guest at a posh house party where they were playing baccarat, a high-stakes card game he himself helped popularize. During the game, one Sir William Gordon Cumming was accused of fiddling with his bets. Not cricket, old boy. The real scandal, though, was that Bertie, the heir to the throne, was present during the alleged infraction and then got involved in a hush-hush agreement to sweep it all under the very expensive Persian rug to avoid a public stink. Naturally, the cover-up failed spectacularly, leading to a sensational court case where the Prince of Wales had to take the stand and testify. The press had an absolute field day. Imagine the future king squirming in court over a dodgy card game. Talk about a royal flush of embarrassment. 5. Ever heard of a king who was also a world-class kleptomaniac? Meet King Farooq of Egypt. This dude ascended the throne as a trim teen and rapidly inflated into a symbol of royal excess, with an appetite for food, women, and, hilariously, five-finger discounts. Despite being richer than Croesus, Farooq apparently couldn't resist pocketing shiny things that didn't belong to him. The most audacious example? He allegedly swiped Winston Churchill's pocket watch during a state dinner. Imagine the sheer audacity. Churchill, a man not known for his patience, reportedly noticed, fixed Farooq with a death stare, and got his timepiece back pronto. It's one thing to rule a country, it's another to be the kind of guest you have to frisk on the way out. 6. Sultan Ibrahim VIII of the Ottoman Empire, also known by the charming moniker Ibrahim the Mad. And boy, did he earn it. His reign was a masterclass in royal dysfunction, possibly fueled by a traumatic youth spent locked up by his paranoid brother. He developed some rather specific tastes, like an obsession with extremely large women, dispatching his agents across the empire to find the most voluptuous ladies for his harem. But his most jaw-dropping act of lunacy, in a fit of rage or paranoia, the historical HR department was a bit vague. He allegedly ordered his entire harem of 280 concubines to be tied in sacks and chucked into the Bosphorus. Yes, you read that right. 280 women drowned. Unsurprisingly, his officials eventually decided this was not ideal leadership material and had him deposed and executed. Good riddance, you magnificent psycho. 7. Let's hop over to 18th century Bavaria for King Ludwig II and the dancer who literally shimmied him off the throne, Lola Montes. Ludwig, grandpa of the castle-building Ludwig II, became completely smitten with Eliza Gilbert, an Irish lass who'd rebranded herself as the exotic Spanish sensation Lola Montes. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was a firecracker who quickly had the aging king wrapped around her little finger. He showered her with gifts, a fancy title, and so much political clout that the actual government and the good people of Bavaria had a collective meltdown. A foreign dancer pulling the strings? Cue the riots! It was 1848, a year of revolutionary vibes across Europe anyway, and Lola's scandalous sway was the final straw that forced Ludwig II to say Auf Wiedersehen to his crown. Talk about a fatal attraction. 8. Now, for a truly unique empress. Theodora, wife of Byzantine Emperor Justinian I. Before she was co-ruling one of the world's most powerful empires, Theodora had a career that would make a modern talent agent blush. She was an actress and courtesan, and in 6th century Constantinople, actress was basically shorthand for lady of extremely flexible morals. One historian, Procopius, who clearly had a massive hate boner for her, wrote about her stage performances being so raunchy they involved live geese and strategically scattered grain. We'll let your imagination fill in the blanks. Yet this former showgirl charmed the pants off Justinian, who literally changed the law so he could marry her. And she wasn't just imperial arm candy. She was a sharp political operator who famously saved Justinian's throne during the Nika riots by basically telling him to grow a pair. From burlesque to Byzantium, that's one heck of a career change. 9. Henry VIII, the king who treated marriage vows like a buffet. Try a bit of everything, and if you don't like it, just get rid of it, often messily. 6 wives. It's less a love story and more a grim game of musical thrones, where the loser often lost her head. This wasn't just about finding a compatible partner. It was about an heir, an ego the size of England, and a spectacular falling out with the Pope. He literally ripped England from the Catholic Church, sparking centuries of religious upheaval, all because he wanted a divorce and the Vatican said, "Computer says no." Imagine initiating a national Brexit from God because your Tinder game was strong, but your long-term relationship skills were, shall we say, lacking. The sheer, monumental audacity is almost impressive, if it weren't so bloody. 10. How about a scandal that involved a king, a very expensive necklace, and a con woman who played everyone like a fiddle? We're talking about the affair of the diamond necklace in 18th century France, starring Queen Marie Antoinette, mostly as an unwitting victim. A grifter named Jean de Valois Saint-Remy convinced the fabulously wealthy and gullible Cardinal de Rohan that Marie Antoinette secretly wanted an obscenely expensive diamond necklace but couldn't buy it publicly. Rohan, desperate to get into the Queen's good graces, bought the necklace on credit. Jean got the bling, promptly had it broken up and sold off, and then the jewelers came knocking on the Queen's door for payment. "What necklace?" she exclaimed. The ensuing public trial exposed the decadence and idiocy of the aristocracy. Even though Marie Antoinette was innocent, the public, already disliking her, believed she was involved, further tarnishing her image and fueling the revolutionary fire. It was a con job so audacious it helped bring down a monarchy. 11. Rasputin. Grigory Rasputin. Just saying the name makes you want to check your pockets and wash your hands. This mad monk, looking like he'd wrestled a bear and lost, somehow charmed his way into the inner circle of Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra, promising he could heal their hemophiliac son. And the truly bizarre part? It seemed to work. Soon this unkempt mystic, reeking of peasant chic and mystery, was wielding immense influence over Russian politics, much to the horror of the aristocracy who were like, "Seriously? This guy is running the show?" They tried to kill him with enough poison to take down a rhino, then shot him multiple times, beat him, and finally drowned him. The man was practically indestructible, a real-life horror movie villain whose scandalous grip symbolized the decay of an empire on the brink of collapse. 12. Edward VIII and Wallace Simpson. Picture this. You're the King of England, Emperor of India, ruler of a quarter of the globe. You have palaces, power, and presumably excellent dental care. Then you meet an American socialite, Wallace Simpson, who is, crucially, twice divorced. In the 1930s, this was a royal scandal equivalent to the crown jewels spontaneously combusting. The establishment basically told Eddie, "It's her or the throne, pal." And our boy Eddie? He chose Wallace. Abdicated. Gave up an entire empire for love, or possibly just to avoid endless ribbon-cutting ceremonies. It was a constitutional crisis wrapped in a romance novel, sprinkled with a few controversial political leanings for extra spice. Talk about a dramatic exit. 13. Cleopatra, Julius Caesar, and Mark Antony. The original ancient power throuple that had more drama than a season finale of, well, any reality show ever. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, wasn't just a pretty face on a coin. She was a razor-sharp politician who knew how to use her kingdom and her considerable charms to play the Roman bigwigs like a fiddle. First, she gets herself smuggled into Caesar's presence rolled up in a carpet. Talk about making an entrance. Has his kid, and secures her rule. After Caesar got a rather stabby surprise party in the Senate, she teamed up with Mark Antony, another top Roman dog. Their very public love affair and political alliance was a giant middle finger to Octavian, Caesar's ambitious heir, leading to a colossal civil war that reshaped the ancient world. Love, betrayal, epic battles, and a double suicide finish. Shakespeare was taking notes. 14. Nero. Another gem from the Roman emperor catalog of how to be utterly unhinged. Nero fancied himself a Renaissance man before the Renaissance was even a thing. A poet, a musician, an actor, a chariot racer. He even competed in the Olympic Games and, quelle surprise, won every event he entered. It's amazing what imperial influence can do for your athletic career. He's infamously accused of fiddling while Rome burned, which is likely an embellishment, but he did use the cleared land to build himself a lavish golden palace, so his priorities were clearly in order. He also had his own mother, Agrippina, assassinated when she got too bossy, and enjoyed persecuting Christians with a level of creative cruelty that was shocking even by Roman standards. His reign of terror and bad taste eventually led to a revolt, and his forced suicide, allegedly lamenting, "What an artist dies in me," modest to the end. 15. The Princes in the Tower. This is history's ultimate cold case, a chilling whodunit that has baffled historians for centuries. England, 1483. King Edward IV dies, leaving his two young sons, 12-year-old Edward V and his 9-year-old brother Richard, as his heirs. Their supposedly loving uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, is appointed Lord Protector. He kindly escorts the boys to the Tower of London, for their safety before the coronation. Then, poof, they vanished, never seen or heard from again. Shortly thereafter, Uncle Richard declares the boys illegitimate and seizes the throne for himself, becoming Richard III. Coincidence? The smart money says no. Did he do them in? Or was it another ambitious noble with a penchant for child endangerment? Skeletons of two children found centuries later under a tower staircase only fueled the grim speculation. 16. Catherine the Great of Russia. An empress who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to, shall we say, acquire it, whether it was territory for Russia or a new handsome young officer for her bedchamber. She had a famously long list of lovers, many of whom were generously rewarded with titles, estates, and power once their imperial service was complete. It was like an 18th century version of The Bachelorette, but with more geopolitical implications. Of course, this robust love life led to some pretty wild and slanderous rumors, the most notorious being a totally deranged rumor involving a horse and one seriously disturbed imagination. Let's be clear, that story is almost certainly a load of stallion-sized manure cooked up by her enemies. But the fact that it even existed speaks volumes about her reputation as a woman who embraced power and pleasure with equal gusto. 17. The Tranby Croft Scandal, or when the future king got busted for allegedly covering up cheating at cards. Albert Edward, Prince of Wales, the man who would become King Edward VII, was a guest at a swanky house party at Tranby Croft. During a game of baccarat, a high-stakes card game the prince himself had popularized, one of the other guests, Sir William Gordon Cumming, was accused of cheating. Not good. What was worse? The prince was present during the alleged infraction and was then involved in a hush-hush agreement to prevent a public scandal, basically trying to sweep it under the very expensive Persian rug. Naturally, the cover-up failed spectacularly, leading to a sensational court case where the Prince of Wales, heir to the throne, had to testify. The press had a field day. It was a royal flush of embarrassment. 18. Queen Caroline of Brunswicks' public adultery trial. If you think modern celebrity divorces are messy, you haven't seen anything yet. Caroline was married to George, Prince of Wales, who later became King George IV. To say they despised each other is like saying the ocean is a bit damp. They separated almost immediately, and Caroline went off to live a rather scandalous life, gallivanting around Europe. When George finally became king, he was so desperate to prevent her from being crowned queen that he put her on trial before the House of Lords, accusing her of adultery. The whole thing turned into a national circus, with every salacious detail of her alleged affairs paraded before the public. The British people, who largely loathed George IV, rallied behind Caroline, seeing her as the wronged woman. It was a massive PR disaster for the monarchy. 19. Right? Let's twirl back to 17th century France for the Affair of the Poisons, which sounds like a particularly nasty PTA meeting. Gone wrong, but was way juicier. Imagine Paris's high society, not just sipping tea, but secretly brewing potions to bump off inconvenient husbands or snag that promotion at court. We're talking fortune tellers with a side hustle in toxicology, priests moonlighting in black magic, and aristocrats suddenly developing a keen interest in chemistry. It got so out of hand, Louis XIV, the Sun King himself, had to set up a special burning chamber court, which sounds less like justice and more like a medieval barbecue invitation. People you'd invite to your swankiest masked ball were suddenly implicated in plots involving arsenic and batwings. It was basically Desperate Housewives meets The Crucible, with better wigs and way more lethal consequences. 20. Next up, let's visit Peter the Great of Russia, a czar who was less great and more terrifyingly enthusiastic about modernizing his country, even if it meant dragging it kicking and screaming into the 18th century. One of his unique hobbies? Dentistry. Yes, Peter fancied himself a tooth yanker extraordinaire, carrying a bag of tools and enthusiastically offering his services to anyone at court with a toothache, or even perfectly healthy teeth if he felt they looked suspicious. Imagine the sheer terror. The czar approaches, a gleam in his eye, brandishing a pair of pliers he probably just used to fix a ship. "Open wide, comrade." There was no politely declining. This wasn't just a quirky royal pastime. It was a power move disguised as amateur oral surgery. You think your boss is intimidating? Try having one who might decide your molars need reorganizing for the good of the empire. 21. Let's slide over to the early 3rd century Roman Empire for Emperor Elagabalus, a teenager who made your average rebellious phase look like a Sunday school picnic. This kid wasn't just into weird music. He was a Syrian sun god priest who decided to make his deity Elagabal the top god in Rome. He even married Elagabal to various Roman goddesses and, wait for it, a Vestal Virgin, which was like the ultimate religious no-no. And his personal life? Honey, it was a reality show waiting to happen. He allegedly tried to get surgeons to give him female genitalia, dressed in women's clothing, prostituted himself in the palace, and appointed his boyfriends, a charioteer and a hairdresser, no less, to high office. Imagine the cabinet meetings. Minister of Grain, your eyeliner is smudged. Unsurprisingly, the Romans, who'd seen some stuff, eventually decided this particular brand of crazy was too much and gave him a one-way ticket to the bottom of the Tiber. 22. Ever felt like your ruler was living in a fairy tale? Well, King Ludwig II of Bavaria actually was. This 19th century monarch wasn't big on, governing. He was all about building ludicrously expensive, over-the-top castles like Neuschwanstein. Think Disney, on an unlimited budget with a side of Wagnerian obsession. He'd host imaginary dinner parties for dead French kings, and generally swan about like he was waiting for his talking animal sidekicks to show up. His ministers, watching the national treasury drain faster than a popped inflatable swan, eventually declared him madder than a hatter and tried to depose him. Days later, Ludwig and his psychiatrist were found dead in a lake. Accident? Murder-suicide? Or did a dragon finally get him? The mystery lives on, much like his ridiculously photogenic castles. 23. Let's jet over to 18th century Denmark for a royal drama so scandalous, it makes modern reality TV look like a church picnic. Meet King Christian VII, a monarch so barking mad, he'd have conversations with the wallpaper and occasionally slap random dignitaries. Enter Johann Struensee, his German doctor, who wasn't just good with a stethoscope. He was a master manipulator. Struensee quickly went from royal physician to de facto ruler, essentially running Denmark, while Christian was off playing with his imaginary friends. But the real kicker? Struensee also started a steamy affair with Queen Caroline Matilda. So you've got a mad king, a power-hungry doctor boinking the queen, and an entire country being run by this illicit duo. Naturally, the Danish nobles eventually had enough, staged a coup, executed Struensee, and banished the queen. Talk about a royal prescription for disaster. 24. And now, for a royal spat that truly stinks, literally. We present King George II of Great Britain and his legendary, deeply serious, and utterly hilarious argument about sheep manure. Yes, His Majesty got his royal knickers in a twist over whose flock produced the superior fertilizer. The story goes that this notoriously short-tempered Hanoverian monarch engaged in a heated debate with his prime minister, Sir Robert Walpole, a savvy country squire. The king, naturally, insisted that his royal sheep, by virtue of their regal grazing habits, dropped only the finest, most nutrient-rich, gold-standard dung. Walpole, on the other hand, likely defended the earthy efficacy of his own sheep's more humble but effective contributions. Imagine the scene. The ruler of a vast empire, possibly red-faced and brandishing a royal scepter for emphasis, passionately arguing the finer points of ovine excrement. It's a wonderfully petty and humanizing glimpse into royal life, proving that even kings can get bogged down in the most down-to-earth and, frankly, steaming of disagreements. 25. King Charles II of England, aka the Merry Monarch, whose main contribution to the nation seemed to be personally repopulating the aristocracy. This dude had more illegitimate kids than most villages had. Well, villagers. He wasn't discreet. He was like, behold, another tiny duke and another one over there. Aren't they cute? He practically ran a royal baby-making factory, and his mistresses, Nell Gwyn, Babs Villiers, a whole chorus line of them, got titles, cash, and probably frequent shopper cards. Parliament, meanwhile, was tearing its hair out trying to fund this one-man dynasty expansion. The scandal wasn't the sex, it was the sheer, unadulterated volume and the blithe assumption that the taxpayers would happily sponsor his extracurricular activities. Keep calm and make more mini-me's should have been on his coat of arms. 26. Empress Anna Ivanovna of Russia, a lady who clearly missed her calling as a reality TV producer specializing in public humiliation. For shits and giggles, she decided to marry off her old court jester to a serving woman she deemed unattractive. Charming. But oh no, a simple registry office wedding wouldn't do. Anna built an entire palace out of ice. Ice walls, ice chairs, an ice bed that probably gave new meaning to frigid, and even ice cannons that went boom. The happy couple, dressed as clowns because why the hell not, were then forced to spend their wedding night in this human popsicle stand, with guards to make sure they didn't try to, not freeze to death. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a public spectacle of, look how bored and powerful I am. If TripAdvisor existed then, the Ice Palace would have 0 stars and a review saying, cold, very cold, and the management is a sadist. OA is 27. Ever had a mate who's really bad with money? Now imagine that mate is King of the Netherlands. William the Sand, before he got the big hat, was basically the poster boy for princely debts are us. We're talking IOUs that could wallpaper Buckingham Palace. When he finally stumbled onto the throne, instead of, say, cutting back on the gold-plated doorknobs, he apparently thought the National Treasury was his personal get-out-of-jail-free card. He tried to secretly strong-arm his own government into paying off his gambling chits and bad investments, and even mulled selling off Luxembourg like it was an old pair of socks he found under the bed. Anyone need a slightly used Grand Duchy? Going cheap? The scandal wasn't just that he was broke, but that he was trying to fix it with the financial acumen of a particularly dim squirrel. 28. Let's consider the Bedchamber Crisis of 1839 in Great Britain, a seemingly trivial squabble that had major political implications. When the Whig government resigned, Queen Victoria, then a young and inexperienced monarch, asked Tory leader Sir Robert Peel to form a new government. Peel, wanting to show he had the Queen's confidence, requested that she dismiss some of her ladies of the bedchamber, who were wives and relatives of prominent Whig politicians. Victoria, fiercely loyal to her friends and perhaps flexing her royal muscles, flat out refused. "I won't part with my ladies," she essentially declared. Peel, feeling he couldn't govern without this symbolic show of support, declined to form a government, and the Whigs wobbled back into power. A constitutional crisis triggered by a dispute over who gets to be the Queen's gal pals. It highlighted the tricky balance between monarchical prerogative and parliamentary power, all wrapped up in petticoats and palace intrigue. 29. Time for a truly bizarre succession crisis from 17th century Portugal. King Afonso VI. This poor chap was physically and mentally disabled, possibly due to a childhood illness. He was prone to violent outbursts, generally incapable of ruling, and, crucially for the dynasty, seemingly incapable of consummating his marriage to the French princess Marie-Françoise of Nemours. His ambitious younger brother, Pedro, saw his chance. Here's the scandalous bit. Pedro not only maneuvered to have Afonso declared incompetent and himself made Prince Regent, but he also managed to get Afonso's marriage annulled on grounds of non-consummation, and then married Marie-Françoise himself. Yes, he married his brother's ex-wife after essentially staging a coup. Afonso was exiled to the Azores, and Pedro eventually became King Pedro II. It's like a telenovela plot: my brother's wife, my crown, my problem. 30. How about a scandal that literally tore a religion in two? Enter Henry VIII of England, again. We've touched on his wife swapping, but the sheer audacity of the king's great matter, his quest for an annulment from Catherine of Aragon, deserves its own spotlight as a scandal of epic proportions. When the Pope said, "Nope, buddy, you're stuck," Henry didn't just sulk. He threw a monumental royal tantrum, declared himself supreme head of the church in England, dissolved the monasteries, Kerching, and told the Pope to take a hike. Imagine breaking up with God's representative on earth because he wouldn't let you get a divorce so you could marry your new flame, Anne Boleyn. This wasn't just a personal spat. It reshaped a nation's religious identity, sparked decades of turmoil, and all because a king really wanted a male heir and a new wife. Talk about a power move with eternal consequences. 31. Let's revisit jolly old England for King Edward II and his, shall we say, very close friendship with Piers Gaveston. Now, kings having favorites wasn't new, but Eddie took it to a whole new level. He showered Gaveston, a Gascon knight of relatively humble birth, with titles, lands, and so much power that the actual English barons felt like they were getting the royal middle finger. Gaveston wasn't exactly subtle either, known for his arrogance and witty, read insulting, nicknames for the powerful nobles. Think of him as the king's overprivileged, trash-talking BFF, who everyone else loathed. The scandal wasn't just the perceived homosexual relationship, though that raised eyebrows, but the sheer audacity of elevating a low-born foreigner above the established aristocracy, leading to multiple exiles for Gaveston and eventually his rather grisly end at the hands of said disgruntled barons. It was a masterclass in how not to manage your courtly relationships if you value your head or your favorites. 32. All right, picture early 17th century Russia, already a barrel of laughs, when false Dmitri the Furin appears, claiming to be Ivan the Terrible's son, Tsarevich Dmitri, who everyone thought was long dead. "Surprise, still kicking," he basically announced. Amazingly, much of Russia, desperate for a change, bought his story. This likely runaway monk with Polish help gathered an army and boom, new Tsar. His reign was short and scandalous. A lavish Catholic wedding to a Polish noblewoman that horrified Orthodox priests, flouting Russian customs and acting like a frat boy on holiday. The nobles soon figured him out, leading to a violent end. His body was burned, and legend says his ashes were fired from a cannon towards Poland, a dramatic exit for a dude whose career was one massive, audacious fib. 33. When Napoleon's brother said no thanks to Spain, and yes to Vegas-level chaos. Meet Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon's older brother who got Spain tossed at him like a regifted fruitcake. Only problem? The Spanish weren't impressed with this imported royal. So Joseph decided to rule from Madrid the way a teenager runs a secret party while the parents are out. He raided Spanish royal palaces for gold, furniture, and priceless art, and then sent it all back to France. But here's the kicker. After Napoleon's downfall, Joseph moved to New Jersey, yes, the US, where he threw wild banquets, claimed to see the Jersey Devil, and allegedly kept a chunk of Spain's crown jewels hidden in his wine cellar. He went from King of Spain to local cryptid enthusiast with a suspiciously nice couch. An entire monarchy reduced to a dinner party anecdote in the American suburbs. So, after that royal rumble of ridiculousness, from corpse brides to klepto kings, one question burns. If you had absolute power tomorrow, no strings attached, what's the first outrageously scandalous thing you'd do? Unleash your inner monarch in the comments. We need to know. And hey, if these tales of regal absurdity made your day, hit like and subscribe. More historical weirdness is coming your way, and trust me, you don't want to miss this.